Stork's hair is great! I'm in Max. You are listening to Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. I'm in Max. Pursuing the RPG hobby with reckless abandon.
Why, hello. Welcome to Season 22, Episode 18 of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. Yeah, I was right. It's 18. Mm-hmm. My name is Stu.
My name is Kimmy.
My name is Stork.
My name is Gina.
This is probably the second time only that we've ever started on time. Ever.
We made 3 minutes late.
Oh.
Wait, no, we're not. We started on time.
Happy Jack's is currently running a listener-viewer survey through October 15th. Past surveys have had a real effect on our the direction of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast and our actual plays.
It's actually true.
You're not supposed to interrupt while I read this. Didn't you get the message? If you would like your voice heard, go to happyjacks.org/2018survey. That's 2018, but survey is all lowercase, and it's all run together. So 2018 survey, happyjacks.org/2018survey. In order to avoid duplicate responses, you must have a Google account and must be signed in to take the survey. Remember, the deadline for the survey is October 15th. happyjacks.org/2018survey. Go take it. Thank you.
Also, because you didn't have the updated version, we do not collect any personal information. So even though you log into your Google account, the survey doesn't record any of your information. We don't know. It's still anonymous. So
don't get IP addresses. We don't get your Google username. Nothing.
No.
Nothing like that. Yeah. The only information you get from a Google form is what people input in the forms.
Cool. But be specific about your feedback.
Oh! Also, if you're at the end of every one, I always put a thing. If you want anything, you just want to tell me that just stuff, and it's usually gripes. I'm fine with that. I want to hear your gripes.
We do.
I would like some specificity. To say, I fucking hate Bob. Bob is the worst. I don't know what to do with that. Do I stop being hated, Bob? I don't know what to say to Bob. If instead you were to say, Bob says this, or Bob said that, now I have an actionable item. I can go to Bob and say, hey, when you say goat fucker at the top of your lungs, it pisses people off. Stop saying goat fucker.
Yes.
And maybe he will and maybe he won't. I don't know. But at least there's a chance that it might change the show. But to just complain without any specificity in telling me what it is specifically I can do to fix it, I don't know what to do. So I usually just ignore it because I don't know what else to do.
Not always, though.
I pretty much ignore it if there's nothing. If
actionable.
I mean, now there have been some gripes because if it's gripes like audio problems,
yes,
but they don't know specifically what the audio problem is, they just kind of. That, obviously, I can figure that out. But it mostly has to do with if you don't like... And people have been... This is not to say... A lot of people have been very specific about the stuff that they don't like and the stuff that they like. And that has been very helpful. But some of the more impassioned ones are the least helpful. It's just like, oh, I fucking hate Bob. Bob is a blight on society. Make Bob go away. I can't kill him. I can't kill Bob.
No. He's thought about it.
I may have. Bob is a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Will not.
Right. And the thing is, for everyone who talks about how much Bob is a blight on society, there's probably 2 or 3 people who are like, yeah, I really like Bob.
Bob's my favorite.
Bob is the poo.
He's my
favorite.
Take
a whiff.
Lots of responses so far?
124.
Ooh, that's good.
And it's going to be running for another 3 weeks. Yeah. So
that's
take that survey.
That's substantial.
Yeah. I think the last major one I did was had 300 responses. Yeah, the last major one. I've done some where I only run it for a week.
Yeah.
And those are like 100, 150 maybe. But the last big one, which was a couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago now, I think was around 300 responses.
Yeah. And when did you put it out? Just this week sometime?
Monday.
Right?
This Monday. Yeah.
Cool.
In this episode of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast, Ed from Florida, excuse me, nay Minnesota, says consistency is key with regards to world design. Mr. CJ, or MRCJ, I don't know if it's supposed to be Mr. or not, disagrees with us on more tactical combat systems and calls us snotty. And Isaac sends us an existential question and a success story. But first, if you'd like to email us, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. We're also on social media. We're on Twitter. Because the nicotine fits are starting.
Yeah,
can you tell?
Just to quit smoking today.
Been 2.5 days. Actually, 2.5 days.
2 of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Send encouragement.
Yeah.
I say.
Don't. It'll just piss me off.
Okay. But think good thoughts.
We're on social media. Happy Jack's RPG, all one word. We're on Twitter, Instagram, the Facebooks, Facebags, all of it for now. Also, I might in a fit of pique delete all of our social media accounts.
Don't.
It would make the world a happier place.
No, just delete yours. Leave the Happy Jacks ones. It's fine.
You sure?
Yes.
How about if I just deactivate them?
I can fix that. That's acceptable.
Also, if you'd like to watch the show live, you can go to happyjacks.org/live, find out where to see all of the stuff, and we do that at 7 p.m. Pacific time on Fridays, this show, and of course all of our APs as well. Also, I should mention that we have a third feed. You know that we have Happy Jack's RPG podcast feed, where you get the Friday weekly advice show. We also have Happy Jack's actual play feed, which is now campaigns, long-form campaigns, and then we have the Happy Jack's one-shot feed, which is one-shot Saturdays, and ShadowCons, and any other one-shots that we happen to do, any incidental one-shots, we'll throw them on that feed as well. So there's actually now 3 feeds. If you'd like to subscribe to those, subscribe to them. If you find out that your podcatcher or your directory does not have the one-shot feed, email me, put in the subject something like one-shot feed request or something like that. And in every pod, most of our people listen. I know this now. Most of our people listen on a smartphone, and they're using a podcast app. Mm-hmm. Every podcast app you can manually add in a feed. So you can go on your phone, go to happyjacks.org, find the feed for one shot, copy it, go back to your app, add it in. That may be how some of these apps add in other outside feeds that aren't already in their directory. Most places use iTunes as directory. Yeah. Which actually started out as Podshow's directory, it turns out, which belonged to Adam Curry. When Adam Curry stopped Mevio, which was the company that existed after Podshow, he had this huge directory of podcasts, and he basically handed it over to Apple and said, I'll let you guys take care of this, because it's got every podcast feed that I've ever had through here. So that's what started. That was a huge part of their. No way. Of their
Adam Curry, former VJ.
Yes, yeah. Well, he's one of the 2 inventors of podcasting.
I had no idea.
Yeah, one of his titles is the Podfather. Why do you think I said no? You can't call me the Podfather, because there is already a Podfather.
Yeah.
And he's got much better hair than I have.
Is that hard?
I have fantastic hair. I just don't show it to anyone.
Oh,
yeah. It's invisible.
Yeah.
Invisible. Also, the 3 feeds are a good example of your feedback matters.
Yes, exactly.
Feedback. That's just
right. That wasn't actually that wasn't in the survey. That was just people emailing,
challenging to work through.
Right.
Yeah. Lots and lots and lots.
Because there's a lot of stuff in it.
Yeah.
I would love to have a feed for every campaign.
Yeah.
The problem is it's a huge amount to maintain, and once a game ends, that feed, if it doesn't keep getting stuff, a lot of places will start delisting it. So suddenly it'll just disappear.
Right.
And we don't want that. We want people to be able to get that stuff.
Bananas.
It is. Consistency is key. Or consistency is key! With an exclamation point. From Ed in Florida, nay Minnesota. Hello, sapient, topical, organic, red-headed kazoo players.
You get it. It's an anagram.
It is. It's an idiom. It's a thing for stork. It's an anagram. It's not an anagram. It's not an anagram. It's a, what do they call it?
Acronym.
Acronym.
Oh, that's
Well,
an
if
acronym.
it was STORK, it would be an acronym for sapient.
Right, that's right.
Yes. Except Kazoo Players isn't really 2 words. It should be
Is
1 word.
Oh.
It should be 2 words.
Yes, it is
not
1
one
word.
And Stork's not redheaded, but that's okay. It's good attempt.
That's still luxurious hair.
Ed from in
Not
Florida,
very topical. And,
Minnesota.
I can play kazoo, but, who can't?
It has been a long few months since I last wrote you. My D&D game at the local store is now at 9 players.
Oh my god.
That's a lot.
That's almost as many as my D&D game.
It's not like a good title to have.
No,
You
it
shouldn't be fighting for that.
With a second at 6. The second game is, quote-unquote, hard for me to fit in. So one player has started running his own game. Victory! And I give you full credit for my devious attempt to gather new GMs. Excellent.
I remember this email now.
Yes.
The one before.
I tried to run a game for this past JackerCon, but to be frank, it was not up to par. I had a feeling down. I had the feel down, but between work and illness, I did not have the story set up well. As a warning, please don't try to run a game sick. Better to hold off and do it right. Lesson learned. But this did get me thinking. What I often rely on to carry a game is the realism of the world I try to run. It made it passable, I think, for the players, even though my story was shit. I have been thinking about it since the game, and I want to run the following past you for peer review.
Awesome.
Put on my spectacles.
It's nice of you to think we're his peers. I appreciate this.
1. If a game world isn't consistent, it doesn't feel real. 2. If my choices as a player don't matter, it doesn't feel real. 3. If everything is at my threat level, it doesn't feel real. I agree with that a lot. 4. If I can't make some sort of change, it doesn't feel real. Go ahead and discuss. I have my thoughts, but I want to hear your opinions, even the wrong ones of the person hidden in my intro. Oh, snap!
Called you out!
Yeah.
Advance to the PS for the right answers. Keep drinking and inspiring people to be better. You do a great job of it. Ed in Minnesota, now in Florida. P.S. No, you're wrong, especially Tappy. Internal consistency.
I think it's consistency.
Is that, I don't
know, is that an inside joke?
It's
I don't know.
It's consistency. Because the later.
All right.
and then he has his little
answers.
things about
It's like
it.
a quiz. I appreciate
It's like a
this.
quiz.
I
As a
know.
teacher, I'm like, all right, I can do this.
2 and 4 are the same thing. Thank you. If my choices as a player don't matter, it doesn't feel real. If I can't make some sort of change, it doesn't feel real. Same thing.
Yeah.
The world has to be mutable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Although you can make choices and not have it change the world.
Yes, that's
That
true.
makes it real too, because
Yes.
that's very realistic. If you can make choices that do nothing for the world, that's as real as you can get.
Good point.
Number 1, if the game world isn't consistent, it doesn't feel real. I guess. I think just because I'm feeling contrary, like, there's also examples where, like, the real world isn't consistent also, and we know that's real, at least we think it's real, unless it's all in my mind.
It depends what he means by consistency.
That's
Yeah.
what
Yes.
I think
Is it
too.
like the laws of the universe?
Yeah,
Or-
or gravity, yes, consistent.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like,
Unless there's
the
effing magic.
Example. One of the examples
Well,
we
yeah.
always talk about is like, if I want to jump over, I don't know what kind of game we're playing, like fairly realistic, and I say I want to jump over the Grand Canyon, and you're like, yeah, no, go do that.
You die.
But you die.
Right.
And then
I'll even let you roll, but I'm going to
yeah, and
ignore
then
the
3
dice.
sessions later, there's something going on where you're like, oh, okay, that sounds really cool. Like, I could see that being like, didn't you tell us all in this world that gravity kind of works the same way?
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
That's one of the reasons I'm always a little reluctant. If I house rule something, or let's say we're trying to figure something out, and rather than pour through the book to come up with something, I'll just say we'll do it this way for now, and then we'll go check the book later. Mm-hmm. That second part is exactly why, because when you sort of on the fly house rule something, very often players start to depend on it unless you give the caveat right up front that we're only doing this because we can't find the rule. We know it's there, but we don't know where it is, so we're just going to do it this way for now.
Mm-hmm. And it's a very good solution because I have been in games where an exploit is suddenly smelled out. Aha! He doesn't know the rule, and then it gets used.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I've had that happen several times, and that's one of the that gets back to this consistency thing, I think. Because hopefully the game designer makes things work so that they sort of feel the way you want that world to feel. Either it's going to be real realistic and really gritty, or it's going to be really super heroic and crazy, or wherever in between. And so I think that a consistency has a lot more to do with the game mechanics, I think.
Let me pause this.
If they're being applied correctly. Any GM can fuck up any game.
Yeah.
World versus system, BBT might be a good example of where you've done a ton of work. There's how many pages? 70? There's a lot of pages.
Oh, in
the
basic BBT book?
Well, yeah,
it's like 70 or 75.
You've done a ton of work.
And that's just the setting. That's not all the other stuff.
If Works came around 1000 CE,
right,
and we're playing in 200, there is a presumption that, because you've said maybe this, and this didn't happen.
All kinds
this
of stuff
happened, but it happened in a different way.
Right.
But stuff will come up all the time that we have to potentially break character in order to play effectively or keep up somewhat of the illusion, because we have to figure out exactly how something fits in.
Oh, something that that hasn't been anticipated. We have to sort of reason out. Right.
And I don't think that happens all the time.
Right.
I just think it can happen in that game,
sure.
and it doesn't mean it's not the fault of the setting. It's just that you couldn't possibly.
Oh no!
Right.
There's no way. I mean, a lot of stuff got invented in those 200 years.
Yeah.
And who knows how much of it did and how much of it didn't, depending on it. I mean, generally, if it has to do with war, I figured, it got invented.
Mm. So, I mean, I don't know that that's inconsistent, but I could see us... and also, if you sit down with 4 different people plus the 5th person is the GM, there is a presumption that is going to be different with every single person about what that scenario maybe looks like at any given moment. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it doesn't mean that anyone's setting out to make something an inconsistency, but if I have the presumption that, I don't know, that even I know there's Fae from the book,
right?
Because there is Fae in the book,
right.
in the magic book.
Yeah.
But if I have the presumption, maybe I was a shitty reader and I didn't read there was Fae. But also,
it may not have been written when the time, because that's all within the last couple months.
And then also, I'm playing a medieval, Middle Ages, daughter of nobility or
right.
money, but I wouldn't think that exists, but somebody else's character might have a different understanding of that,
sure.
a different point of view. So
exactly.
Once again, doesn't mean anybody sets out to be inconsistent, but then when those things arise in game, I think that's when you have to get everybody on the same page.
Sure.
Maybe. I think those inconsistencies are fine though. Inconsistencies in character of what different characters believe. To me, that's interesting, and that helps drive a plot forward.
Oh, sure. And I think that will be part of what that plot is.
Yeah.
Because
I think that is a plot. That's amazing and great.
Your character sees right now, the way your character is right now, anything you see that's supernatural, it's got to be a fucking demon. It's Satan.
For sure.
It's the work of Satan.
Oh yeah,
and that's super interesting.
Yeah. Right, and maybe as time goes on, it's well, there have been some things that have happened that have not seemed very devil-like. Maybe not.
Even if
that
doesn't happen, I think the inconsistencies that are the problem are ones you were saying between the mechanics and inconsistencies in the world the GM is creating, not inconsistencies between different characters' understanding of it.
Yeah.
Because to me, that's my favorite thing about a game.
Right.
And can build a whole story. Because even if you had no plot, just Gina and them going through the world with those inconsistencies and having those different points of view could make an amazing story.
It's going to be a story in itself.
It definitely was, but maybe a better, more specific example, and Abria and I spent a bunch of time talking about this off camera.
Oh, yeah.
Is Abria's approach to magic in character, I was like, maybe I missed something, but I think they burn witches here. In my head, and I'm like, holy crap, because she's just doing magic out in the open, magic out in the open. And so there was a point where we wanted to clarify, all of us, that...
Well, she's done most of the stuff in front of orcs.
Yeah.
Not in front of,
once in front of in town, when the cart thing.
That was late at night, though, wasn't it?
Was it late at night or early in the morning? Something like that.
It was something like that. But yeah, I don't think
But it was one of those where I thought maybe I had missed something, but she was actually purposefully doing that in character, knowing that she was, but I was confused.
Abria throwing wrenches?
Right.
Yeah.
What?
Right.
And to be fair, if she gets to the point where it's like, you're standing there in front of, I don't know, the Archbishop of this region, and you're going to start to cast a spell. I'm going to say, okay, Bria, just so you know, you're standing in front of someone who, by himself, can declare you a witch.
Yeah.
And take you into custody and put you on trial.
Right.
And all of your friends, just so you know, go ahead and roll if you want to cast that spell. But I would make sure that you knew the consequences.
Word could spread, and we could start getting chased out of town with
Absolutely.
torches and pitchforks.
But to me, like, the inconsistencies between the characters isn't the problem. Like, if you were inconsistent as the GM, like, oh, these people are the only ones who get called on for doing magic, and this character never gets called on for it. Like, that's the inconsistencies that can kind of wreck a game and can make it not seem real.
Sure.
Because at that point, I mean, you get that all the time where it's like, oh, the GM's dating one of the players or something like that's like those key moments and like or different things like that where it seems like favoritism or it seems like the GM's not paying enough attention or things like that.
Usually if I have inconsistencies in it, it's plot related.
Yes.
No, it's not an accident. It's plot related.
Yeah, and see those even those I don't even mind so much.
If you had, let's say you guys are going along and being careful and not casting spells anywhere where people can see and all this stuff, and all of a sudden there's some guy who's out there and he's like, fuck it, blowing things up or doing whatever he's doing, clearly in front of witnesses, there's a reason and a story behind that.
Right.
That makes sense.
No, and that's why in that one instance, I thought we had, like, player to player, like, I was missing something, like what Kimmy was saying with regard, or you said, with regard to plot. Like, every once in a while, it's like, oh, wait, where are we? I thought we were still at that.
Right.
So that's what that was, and then once you are like, oh, no, get it, character choices, cool.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, for sure, sometimes it can happen with plot, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Where it's like, you're totally into the game and you're into it, and then you go to write somebody's name down and you missed that everybody said you guys all went to town and you're still thinking you're in a dungeon or something. Or, and then it's like, oh, wait, we're not there? Oh, okay, I don't do that.
And just the physical rules of the world need to... and that's why I made the point about house ruling and making sure, because mechanics often have a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
And that's why I wrote down here, I was... and you guys just touched on it a bit, which is, the players are held to a certain standard with rules and the way the world is working. And then sometimes, with certain GMs, the NPCs aren't. They're breaking rules left and right. And that can be more frustrating to a player than anything else, where the magic NPC can fly to the top of the tower without, casting a spell or whatever. And you're like, what the...
On Fear the Boot, they call that the Captain Von Badass.
Yeah, there you go, right? And it can be... very frustrating for players where all of a sudden the NPCs are breaking all the rules of the world, except you still have to follow them.
Yeah.
Oh, I got called on that. I ran a time travel game, and Bill called me on that. This was very early on. It was in the late 80s. And they were going through it was a time travel thing, and there was these people who were sort of like enforcers of a rival timeline who would come in, and they were wearing this powered body armor, which of course none of the player characters had, none of the NPCs had. And an NPC who was basically Zorro, because they showed up, and originally jumped on back of one of these guys and broke his neck. And then Bill's like, threw his character sheet and says, all right, hold on. What's the DR of their armor? And I'm like, okay. All right. He's jumped on his back and he's got, like, covering his eyes. I'm like, okay, that'll work.
Better. Nice. Yeah.
But, I mean, that's, you get young GMs get caught up in that.
Well, and sometimes with magic you can bend it a bit for flavor. Like your badass wizard might be able to cast a spell that's not in the book, because it's just for flavor and he's a badass.
I do that all the time.
But as long as the rest of the rules still apply to him, like when you hit him with an arrow, he still bleeds, or he still runs out of energy or mana, whatever system you're using. Because there's nothing more frustrating than getting that NPC that's unkillable.
Well,
for cheating reasons.
Right. I don't know if for those of you who have followed my GURPS history as far as writing, because I would publish by him a couple of times in their role player magazine. Or it was more of a newsletter back then. But I wrote an article about mages and how to control them. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people hated me for that. A lot of people who are now movers and shakers in Steve Jackson games and actually publish books and shit like that were like deriding the shit out of me. But whatever.
That's in your bio.
It's in my bio because I'm well known as being an asshole in the RPG community. But right?
That's
I know.
A nice surprise face for those of you listening.
And it's going to get worse because the nicotine fits are starting.
I can vouch for this because when we got Steve Jackson on the show millions of years ago, he still knew Stu by name.
He remembered.
Hi, Stu. He remembered you.
I emailed him and he's like, I recognize your name, and I said, I wrote this and this and this.
God.
Okay.
He still remembers.
Oh yeah, because all the guys who work for him hate me.
Yeah, so I can vouch for that.
But
if it makes you feel better that he hates Storm now more.
Yeah.
Just his question. Just as one stupid question. I love that.
Remember.
I love that so much.
Still remembers Stu.
But one of the things, another contribution I made to GURPS was there are spells that I devised that ended up going in GURPS Grimoire, which was the second magic book.
Really?
I had a party of 4 or 5 players, 3 of which were mages. And they had all kinds of spells at super high levels. They could cast a spell called they had all had teleport. And they had one called Blink, which is a reaction spell, which is like teleport, but it's short distance. So it's like
the Banff spell.
You're going to swing at me. Exactly. You're going to swing at me, and I'm going to disappear and reappear over here instantaneously. Right, exactly. Same thing. I came up with a spell because I got tired of it. Mm-hmm. So I came up with a spell called Teleport Trace, which worked on teleport and on blink. And so, as a reaction, they could make their roll. If they made their spell roll successfully, they appeared exactly the same distance relative to you when they stopped. So of course they can't still take a swing at you because they had to cast a spell, which aborted their attack. But that spell, and then the players are like, we got to figure this out. I don't remember how they found it out. I don't remember if they found a scroll or if they got one of these mages and tortured the information out of them. I don't remember. They may have been the latter, but they got the information somehow, so they could have this spell as well. And then we compiled a bunch of spells that had been written for a bunch of campaigns. A bunch of them were mine, but some of them were others, and we sent them all in, and that's why we're credited in the Grimoire book. All of us actually.
That's
very cool. But that was a thing where it's like, okay, this is annoying me. I'm unable to not kill the party. Make combat seem dangerous.
Sure.
That's all I want to do is make and really that's an important thing for me as a GM. I want combat to seem dangerous, and it didn't. Yeah. They were just like, we're magical gods.
And then, of course, here's the problem too with a consistent world is that your players will find an exploit. Like I'm reminded of the fact, speaking of GURPS, about they would levitate the guy up 30, 40 feet.
The apportation spell. That's correct.
And then drop him, and physics would take over. And falling in GURPS is a bitch.
Oh,
so basically, you drop a person twice probably, and they were dead.
You move them in a direction, and then you do no longer need to concentrate on the spell for 1 minute, and they will move at a rate of 1 yard per second. So there will be 60 yards in the air, and you just choose not to renew the spell, and they fall, and there is, of course. Knowing how much damage you will take from a 60-foot fall in GURPS is a very precise thing.
Yep.
And it will give you a precise number of dice, which is going to be quite a few. Yep. And it's going to kill any character, even if you roll all once.
And that's an example of a consistent world being a bear to you and the players.
Absolutely. But it's nice because of the physics of the world are consistent, the players were able to figure out this exploit.
Yep. That's right.
So, I mean, I didn't mind it. All you have to do is just give another mage on the other side that same spell, and give him the same idea.
Have him fight in small dungeons where it's only like an 8-foot ceiling.
But there's like one mage, and like, oh my god, there's a mage here. Oh, fuck.
Yeah, right. Terrified.
Oh, damn it. Beep. And I think you have to resist with your health or something like that. And most mages don't have crappy health back then. They needed to have high strength and they needed to have high IQ.
Yeah. So that kind of leads into number 3, which is if everything is at my threat level, it doesn't feel real. So if everything is at or below their danger level, if they can bamf away from everything, like, I don't know. I kind of agree with that, but I also, I mean, if everything's killing you, it's also not fun. So you have to have like the nice balance. It's
in a real world, you may look at it and go, I'm not going to win this fight. We're going to run away. Or we're going to figure out some way around this where we don't have to fight that thing.
Yes. Absolutely.
I mean, that's one of the things I think makes a real seeming world.
Yes.
Is that there are things out there that are just too dangerous for you to fuck with.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, I like a little hybrid of that when I run, which has been a long time, which is to keep it simple early on. Because there's nothing I feel worse about than killing somebody right out the gate. They spend all that time making a character, and all of a sudden you murdered them.
There's a D&D module. There's like a blue dragon someplace, and there's a way to get around it, and people would have TPK after TPK after TPK trying to get past this blue dragon by killing it.
Right.
And they're like 5th or 8th level characters. They're not going to kill this dragon.
And it would piss me off if I spent, a day or two working on my L5R character and backstory and everything, and then get killed.
That wasn't Tomb of Horrors. It was I'm sorry.
So anyway, it's kind of like to ease it in. Once the characters level up a bit, then I will start being a bit more aggressive with my villains and stuff. Because you're right, without any potential threat, it changes the game. You don't run away from things anymore. You don't think about tactically about ambushes and such. You basically just charge things head on, and it's boring for the players. It's boring for the world. It's boring for the GM. Because you're not in any real threat. There's also the tension of just getting snot kicked out of you. We have spoilers. Is it up yet? The L5R game where you were taking hit after hit after hit.
Oh yeah, that one's been up for a little while.
She basically stood there and this thing just wailed on her.
Snot.
And all of us at the table, our heart rates went up. We all started getting a little sweaty. We're like, we might just lose Kimmy here. And Kimmy's like counting every die very carefully because it was within just
it was pretty
points.
Close.
Are you talking about the last session?
No.
You're talking about
against the first
against the
time,
Oni.
Against the Oni.
Yeah.
And had that threat been
the only meat shield in the party,
had that threat been softballed, we all would have just been sitting there drinking beer, laughing it off, and it wouldn't. It had a much more impactful experience on all of us and Kimmy's character.
Well, it was just a good thing that I built my character like hardcore, because any other character would have been murdered.
Right. So I agree with that. I think without actual threats, without actual fear, it changes the game. I know when I play GURPS or Travel or something much more deadly, I think a lot more about the terrain, about exits. Like, if this goes sideways, how do I get out of here? I think about how we can use stuff to our advantage. What if instead of shooting him directly, what if I shoot the barrels over his head? And I get much more creative when the threats are much more serious to me. And I think it's a much more interesting game on all sides because of that.
Absolutely. Well, and because it was like those deadly combats are when you get a chance to really be a hero. Because if you stick around through a fight that you know you're going to win, you're not a hero. It's like facing those fights and not running away. Like when you might die or your character might die, that's when you get to kind of have that hero moment sometimes.
Sure.
Which is a lot of why we play RPGs, to be a hero and a cool story or a villain or whatever we want to be. But like those surefire wins kind of take that element of anticipation, like Sork was saying, but also kind of lower the hero factor a little bit, and if you do survive, that triumph too. Mm-hmm. So you get this middle ground combats all the time, which can get boring. That you don't necessarily have the super low lows, but you also don't have those high highs either.
Right. Well, I when I was running 4th edition D&D, I very dutifully would go in and make the thing with the little thing, and it was and then finally when I stopped doing that was the fight you had with the guys that would grab you by the neck and drag you away.
Yeah.
Right. It's fuck it. They were all brutes or whatever they were called. They weren't the big bosses and they weren't the mooks. They were the middle one.
Yeah.
And I'm fuck it. I'm just going to have a bunch of those things. And that was the toughest fight you guys had. Now, it took 4 hours of combat to get through it.
D&D.
But...
And 11 people.
You also did not know if you were going to win.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that existed in any combat before that.
Nope.
I kind of feel the same way about quote-unquote random encounters. That if you have session after, in a long campaign, if you have session after session after session and nothing
Are you a fan of Wandering Damage?
No, but I'm a fan of that. Had nothing to do with the overall story arc. It's some guy picked on somebody in a bar or something.
I don't mind that. I don't mind that stuff at all. I don't think all combats have to be involved with the story necessarily. I think they have to make sense.
Yeah.
Why they happen. It can't just be.
I go into a bar and I want to start a fight.
There's a zombie in the bar. Oh, it sees you and comes at you.
Yeah.
Why did the barkeep allow a zombie in?
Right.
But if you're traveling,
Didn't anyone notice the zombie?
Dangerous road from point A to point B.
There might be
and
bandits.
It's a dangerous road. There might be bandits.
Exactly.
Or bugbears.
Although very often, if the bandits are going to come after you and suddenly realize, oh fuck, these are badasses.
Yes.
They're going to hightail it and they're going to leave and they're going to run away as fast as they possibly can in every possible direction, so that the party does not catch all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that can lead to
Good
other
point.
stories too.
Absolutely.
Then now all of a sudden you're infiltrating the den of the 40 thieves or whatever it is. It can be. I like random encounters occasionally, especially if it's a long running campaign and. I
don't know if I would necessarily make them random.
Well, yeah.
I think it would be more like here's
incidental.
This is here's a good point for something like this to happen.
It might be semantics that we're arguing at this point, but yes.
But I'm not going to. What I'm saying is, when I'm doing my game prep, I'm not going to roll on a table and say.
No, that's why
you
I
need
was
a green dragon.
Because it just isn't like. Otherwise, that whole I saw somebody say this online, and I was like, that was a cool turn of phrase. The whole whiff of illusionism, where this is an illusion. It's all part of the story. It's like, guess what? That totally pulls me out of the story because, life doesn't work like that. So sometimes things are going to happen that don't make sense to.
And you might have an interesting complication from this incidental combat.
Yeah.
Where suddenly it's like, oh, especially if it's not D&D, if it's a game where if you get hurt, you stay hurt for a while. It's like, oh shit, our healer is unconscious and going to be very useless for the next 3 weeks while he heals, because he can't heal himself because he's sucks,
right,
or whatever.
It's a rule in the world.
So now what?
Medicine rather than magic, and you have to put a bandage on it.
So now what are we going to do? We don't have our healer, which means we can't get in a whole bunch of fights, which means we're going to have to figure a way around whatever it is we were going to be doing. You know, see what I'm saying?
Yeah. You have to talk to people.
We have to talk to the experience points.
That's nuts.
No one remembers what that module was.
No, I know.
There is someone in there who confirmed with me it wasn't Tomb Horrors.
Okay.
It was something else. It's an adventure that is not as meat grindery. Grindy? But there's is it the White Plume Mountains?
No, I played I played the 5e version of White Plume Mountain.
Because it
that
doesn't
has a dragon in it.
The dragon doesn't have anything to do with the adventure. It just happens to be at one of the possible places where you can enter.
Isn't that an old sphinx? Like an old sphinx that's at the beginning of the White Plume Mountain, where there are 3, and you get Whelm.
It's been way too long. I played White Plume Mountain.
You get either the hammer, Whelm, the trident, which I can't remember the name of, or Black Razor, which is the badass sword that eats souls.
It was like 30 years ago that I played that.
No,
it's more than that. It's more than 30 years ago because it was in the 70s.
in the 5e book, the Yawning Portal. I think they've.
Is that the?
Steve's like, there's a book for 5e? I didn't read that.
No, the Yawning Portal is that an homage to the Sphere of Annihilation?
There's a
shithead.
I don't know.
Yeah, you crawl into the mouth and you're dead.
You're dead. You're just gone.
Spoilers.
There's like 5 different old school modules that they updated for 5e.
Barrier Peaks was the alien one.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't White Plume Mountain. It was Barrier
shit.
Peaks, and I wonder if it was Barrier Peaks that had it.
Maybe.
But as I recall, the dragon doesn't really have anything to do with the adventure itself. It just happens to be living in one of the areas where you can try to get in, but there's another way to get in.
Yeah, it's like the MMO way of running a game.
Right?
It's like, there's a thing there. If you run into, oh God, run away.
Welcome to Old School Dungeons.
Yes, I know. It's fine.
That's what, I mean, yes.
Yeah.
And the dragon is asleep.
Mm-hmm. Should we look at his answer?
Oh, yeah, let's go ahead and look. Did we do the last one? If you can't make some sort of a change, it doesn't seem real.
We said 2 and 4 were the same.
Oh, they kind of are. I do think they kind of. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Internal consistency is all about making it feel like things work the same even when they don't. D&D doesn't says falling 500 feet is 20d6 to your 20th level fighter. Make it a DC 20 death check, all or nothing. Make it feel right even if you have to change the rules.
Isn't that exactly the opposite of being consistent?
Maybe.
I mean...
Maybe it's good to have this paper peer-reviewed here.
Yeah. Sorry.
But he's also saying, what he's kind of saying is to make every game a simulation, this game.
Well, an example he's giving is really...
To make it feel right, which means make it feel like reality.
Yeah.
The example he's giving really applies to 3 and not to 1. Where he's talking about making a death check, all or nothing.
Right.
And it really applies to 3, which is everything is at my threat level, it doesn't feel real.
Right.
Interesting.
Number 2, choice is important. Like a famous legal case, telling your players they have no choice can be a game ender.
Yes.
For good reason. We have little enough impact on the real world. Who wants to bring it into their fantasy world? Just remember that choices have consequences, and those can be fun plot twists. Did I get that right?
Yes, yeah. Sounded perfect. Keep it up. We've talked about that lots of times.
I didn't get a harumph out of that guy.
We've talked about that lots of times, and the consequences are infinitely more interesting than the actual just you succeed.
Well, just what we were just talking about with a random encounter can totally change the nature of an adventure that the party is on their way to doing because they happen to have fought a couple of dumb orcs. Number 3, making changes is important.
Orcs aren't always dumb.
No, they are not. There's an entire cast of them who specifically aren't.
Yes.
But the rest are. No, I'm kidding.
No. All right, continue.
Making changes is important. Redemption is the soul of Darth Vader in Star Wars. If you can convince Bobby the Slaughterer of Children to change or stick a knife in his back, having Johnny the Slaughterer of Children really sucks. Not to mention...
In other words, if you kill one and there's another one there waiting in the wings because they killed
Johnny and Bobby, right, yeah.
So it's like not a mere hedge mage dies. Oh, no.
There's another not a mere hedge mage.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Billy Goat's gruff.
Yeah, exactly.
It is, yes. Not to mention might be a trigger. I don't know if the silver coin I tipped to the stable girl allows her to buy her freedom to become the next high priestess of Ogdama the Kinda Awesome. Though
I like his
though that could be fun.
Ogdama is a good name. I'm writing that down.
Ogdama. Mm-hmm. But if I strive to do something, the GM should only negate me 1 time in 5. That makes the 1 time sting and have meaning. That's everything at my threat level. I think they got mixed up.
He might have.
I think, yeah. I think this is obviously for...
No, that was for the other one, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you get my point now. I'm curious what you guys... Aha! I found question 3. This is a pet peeve, so feel free to disagree. Why is everything at my...
Disregard.
Right.
Not disagree. Feel free to disregard.
I choose to read disagree.
Okay. You can choose that, and I will correct you like I do my 4th graders when they choose to read a wrong word too.
He's not smoking anymore. He's very disagreeable.
I know.
Why is everything set to my level? Should all the dragons in my region be 3 feet long, so they are a CR of 2? Do big dragons die when they come here? Do 14th level rangers collapse in this zone? Let things have a range and figure out why they aren't wiped out if they are low CR. Goblins outbreed their death rate. Got it. Ogres are not that common and fear stone forts and the big crossbows, ballista. Got it. Just like the real world have gaps in power levels, how else do you get Belgians? Oh, come on now. That ain't nice. They tried. They flooded like a third of their country or something to try to slow the Germans down in World War I. That was badass.
Yeah.
Was it the Belgians? I think it was the Belgians.
Probably.
I would think the Dutch, because they were all about the flooding with the gates.
It's the eastern one. Which is the eastern one? I know European geography like I know any geography that isn't the United
literally
States.
Between France and Germany. They have to walk right between, but Flanders is Dutch. And the Flanders has the Zuiderzee, and they have all of those canals, and they have the water, so I'm going to say Dutch. But it could have been Belgium, because they are right between France and Germany.
I'm going to look it up.
I'm going to start reading the next email.
I know.
Wait, yeah, okay, yeah, I can go on to the next one.
Okay. That is just a board game. Mr. CJ. Hello, flaming douches. snotty voice. Oh, now that's just a board game now. Once the miniatures come out, the game stops. Really? I've listened to a lot of Happy Jack's actual plays, and I think I have detected a pattern. People play samurais, warriors, slayers, generals, stormtroopers, explorers, gang members, all kinds of people who put themselves in harm's way, people who find themselves in harm's way seemingly, people who find themselves in some kind of fight. When I read the rules of different game systems like GURPS, one thing I notice is that there is a lot of space, time, and effort put into the combat system.
Absolutely. You
could say the whole thing is built around combat. And this isn't really about role-playing or not role-playing, nor is it about min-maxing or whatever. If I'm playing a certain game, I want to put myself in harm's way. The combat part should be important and fun and interesting. If the designer takes that much time to make sure that the combat is right, entering into that activity should be one of the best parts of the game. Once the miniatures come out, that is when the game really starts. It is when those moments where the survival of the characters comes into question, where the stakes are high, and really when the game itself mechanically is most fully realized. So that is that, Mr. CJ.
MRCJ,
MRCJ,
perhaps.
Whatever. P.S. Whatever.
No.
I actually use miniatures, but I try not to keep it down to a tactical because what I've discovered is if you have terrain and you have architecture or whatever, just enough so that everybody knows where they're standing, just so they get a general idea of what's going on, it solves a lot more things. So like, am I standing near a barrel? Am I?
Yeah.
Sure.
That way they can take one quick look, they know where the bad guy is, they know where the exits are, and you're ready to go. And even you occasionally will draw a map. Here's a room, here's exits.
Mm-hmm. Usually as a last resort.
But it's
yes. Most of the time someone says, am I near cover? I will just say yes.
I like the miniatures because that way at a glance everybody's on the same page. It solves some of the problems of being inconsistent. Like, I didn't know we were in a room. I'm sorry, I was typing a Slack note. I didn't. When did we? Now there's a map. But I try really hard to not let it descend in. You move 3 feet, make your roll. You miss. You move 3 feet. I try really hard to keep it more of a role of an RPG instead of a miniatures game.
When we used to play GURPS, we played by the advanced tactical rules. So it's like if you have a move of 6, you take your miniature, I want to turn around and go the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But we all knew the system so well. And combat in GURPS is fairly deadly. Mm-hmm. The combats didn't take much time. They might take an hour if it's a complicated combat. And if especially if you've got characters, you're talking about fantasy game where you've got people with swords and they have high skill levels, so their parries are high. So it takes a while to get an attack in. But usually once one side gets an attack in and damages the other person, it's only a matter of time before the one who hit wins, usually. Yeah. But those combats usually never went too long. That was one of the things. Like I would agree with this to a certain extent, but not when it comes to like 4th edition D&D.
Well, that's the thing that really left a sour taste in our mouth, is that those games went on and on and on, and it really descended into you move 3, you move 3, you move 3, you move, you move.
I roll, I miss, I roll, I hit, I roll, I miss, I roll, I hit.
Start over again. Everybody moves again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I think it's no. You're good. I think it depends on what you're looking for in a game.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Overall, maybe every single session, or maybe it's a particular session, because otherwise, I think that comment. I don't know. At least my recollection is when it first was made, it was about the fact that once you start playing tactically and a grid is out, that people will often start forgetting those flourishes that made the fiction interesting. So they forget to say what that spell looked like, or what they're saying to those people, and you can go round after round and realize that no one has said anything to anyone else in character,
That doesn't have anything to do with.
Yeah, and maybe you wouldn't, like, if it's a badass fight and you're like, grunt, swing my two-handed sword, bam, bam, bam. But I think that's part of it.
No, I can totally see how, like, you could role-play a chess game where you're playing in a battlefield and you've got your things, but then at some point you zoom out and it just becomes a chess game and you forget that there's all this other drama going on. You forget to describe the scene, you forget to describe the horns growing, you forget to describe the circles of crows and the smell. You just go on and moving miniatures around. You really, it does become a disconnect.
Well, because
I enjoy it sometimes. I mean, it sort of depends on the system. Like 4E is a terrible example. But like, I actually really like playing like 5e and using mats in 5e. I love painting minis, and that sort of thing. Like, I think that there are definitely systems that do it well or do it better at least.
You like painting minis, you start a Warhammer army.
Yeah.
You keep telling me that, and I keep knowing that that's a terrible, terrible idea for me. But there's definitely times, as long as it doesn't take 4 hours when you have 4 hours to play, like, there can be amazing moments and very heroic moments. And as someone who kind of likes tactical stuff, like, sometimes that's really fun.
Sure.
Like, being able to see everything out, especially when you're playing D&D.
I agree.
Or something like that, when you've got, like spells or abilities where it's like, it really does give you an advantage to flank or something like that. It can be really, really fun. Like, when we did our Deserts of Despair, we used a map quite a lot. And we used maps when we did Dead Rain. Mm-hmm. And that really helps sometimes to really see, especially when you've got, like, a horde of zombies. Like, those can be really great moments.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, this is blasphemous on this show, but I liked 4E for that. It's the first game, because I don't play MMOs, and it was the first game I had where there was that whole controller, healer, I fucking loved to get the mat out there and be like, I'm playing a druid, and I can entangle, and I can shift that person over so that now I have 2 members of my party flanking, and da-da-da. So I definitely agree that can be a really exciting and fun part, because depending on the system that you're playing in, there could be a very big chunk of your character that is built with all this stuff, whether it's feats or moves, or
especially with 4E, because that was the way combat was resolved.
Yeah.
You had to.
I would agree with you if you were to quarter the number of hit points everything has and quadruple the damage everything has.
Yeah.
So it didn't take
the problem for me solely, it was an interesting. It's an interesting board game. The 4th edition combat system. It is an interesting board game. It just took too long.
Yeah.
And it didn't belong in the middle of a role-playing game. That's exactly like last week when Tomes or whoever it was talking about playing a Edge of the Empire game, a Star Wars game, and then stopping in the middle of it and getting X-Wing out and then playing the combat in using the X-Wing rules. And suddenly, okay, well, you play an X-Wing game because you want to kill several hours, right? Because that's how long it takes to do it.
Well, also, it's like the Warhammer of space.
Right.
Where you want to collect.
Yes, it is.
It's a way to turn money into plastic.
But I'm assuming if you're playing a role-playing game, you want to play a game, yes, but you also want to role-play. So to have a 4 or 5 hour combat when you normally only have 4 or 5 hour sessions means you're going to have a lot of combat and you're not going to have a lot of role-playing, because people don't tend to role-play very much when they're playing the game. You can talk about how it's fun to have a combat, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But really, at some point after the second hour, people are like, would you fucking stop role-playing and finish the fucking combat, right? Yeah. At some point, someone's going to start to snap.
I don't disagree with that. I've seen that.
That's Stu right now.
Right. But it used to drive me crazy. Yeah. And it drove everyone crazy when we had that one big long combat. The only combat where you guys actually thought you might not win.
Right.
To have that happen, and the players are like, I know we can win this, but my God, it's taking forever.
Yeah, it took 8 hours.
It literally,
It took like 8 hours.
I don't think it was that long. It wasn't. That was the night they had the shooting across the street.
Yeah, we ended up being here super late.
Yeah, I thought we finished the combat and we ended. But the combat was like 3 or 4 hours.
We were still here from like 4 to almost midnight. It was a really long combat. Because we left around 10 or 11.
You're right. It was daylight. It was daylight when we started. Yeah, you're right.
And then it wasn't.
So I want to play a Traveler game, and I'm going to use Twilight Imperium as my combat.
Right, exactly.
Right? You know?
Because
that's like a 10-hour game.
There was a game called Snapshot, which was a tactical, like, shipboarding game that's based on the Traveler universe, but it's a much more detailed tactical level combat game that you could use if you wanted a more detailed combat system for Traveler.
I think there's a balance to be struck.
Sure.
And I think that's really the thing, is maybe everything in moderation. It's like you need to be able to, as a GM, you also have to be aware of the fact, like, oh my gosh, we're spending way too much time playing a board game and not enough time. I need to start describing what's going on in the world, and then vice versa as players too. You need to say to yourself, okay, this is taking forever. What?
Yeah.
Can we talk our way out of this? Is there a chip for talking my way out of this
run away?
On the board?
Yeah. Well, and I also want to specify, like, I'm not defending 4E's combat because it's bullshit and I hated it. but like 5e, they've done a lot of great improvements on.
Yes.
It's much better, much
Still
more
takes you longer
streamlined.
than
It does take longer than
longer
you'd like sometimes. We also had like 9 players, so we
not when we played 5th edition.
No, not when we played.
We had
5th
6.
edition. Yeah, still a lot. Still above our ideal 4 to 5.
Yeah, once we got to like 8th level, I was afraid to have a combat because that's all we would do.
Yeah.
In the
right
2 or 3 hour session.
Right, but I do think, and especially if there's a little bit of a social contract when you're sitting down to a specific game. If you're sitting down to PBTA versus D&D 5e or D&D 4e, like people join a game, there's like, this is how this game is run. Like you sit down to a D&D game, you're kind of agreeing, like, okay, yeah, combat's going to be a thing.
Oh, yeah.
So part of that is on, like, if you don't like games like that, don't join games like that. But some people really like that combined element, like having that board game element to the role-playing. So I think that's a valid thing. Like, there are plenty of systems that don't have it, so play those if you don't want it.
There you go.
And if you want that, then play systems that do have it, and don't knock anyone else's shit.
Yeah,
sure.
Thank you, I'm done.
And if you want a game that has combat that goes really, really, really fast, play Moment of Truth. Or GURPS.
And I swear we bugged...
GURPS is only fast because everybody dies.
We bugged Mr. CJ before, and I swear he said it was Mr. CJ.
All right.
Merkage.
Oh, yes, and chat room informed us, now that we're moving on, Return to the Temple of the Elemental Evil.
That was it.
Return to the Temple of the Elemental. That's it. Yes,
that is the crazy one with the dragon.
I actually found a friend and didn't get it. Yeah. So I'm going to tell them.
Existential question and a success story from Isaac.
Greetings, lords and ladies of Jack and the advocate of the devil's douchebag. So that's lords and that's not an anagram.
No, that was not.
Okay. Oh, no, it could be like what Spanish word starts with 2 L's? There's a couple of them.
It's Welsh.
Yama.
This isn't going to be as funny as we
Isaac here with the promised tale of success and what is, in my opinion, my peak as a DM, as well as a question for the Council of Joyous Jackanapes. First and foremost, I'm curious if any of you have ever had to deal with someone who shouldn't play RPGs. I'm a firm believer that anyone can play, but perhaps not everyone should. Recently, I was speaking with a friend of mine, and he told me of a newbie player at his table who got into an existential crisis of mind due to how much freedom he was given as a PC.
That's an MMO player, or something like that.
What? I can do anything? And analysis.
Where are the rats? I need to kill rats. I'm first level.
Tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. This fellow wouldn't show his character sheet, was convinced the DM was cheating because he wouldn't show the enemy's character sheet, killed the quest NPC to see if he could get away with it, and then seemed shocked that the town guard turned on him because he killed their boss in front of them in broad daylight. All of this and more got me thinking, is it wrong of me to think that some people should not play these kinds of games? And this is a fair DM, one who I've played under and even played in the scenario that he was running. Drink, discuss, and continue for the tale of triumph.
I don't think it's... I think it's too early to decide.
I think so, too. For this particular person.
There's I mean, you got to learn.
Have you ever played with somebody that just was like more than just a wrench thrower, but like actively setting out to sabotage your game?
Oh, sure.
I have, and it's not fun. I've had to run them. No.
But if this is a brand new player...
it sounds like he went and killed the boss just in front of them just to see if he could get away with it. That's more than wrench throwing. That's like an act of like, fuck you.
I think what you have is someone who plays MMOs and wanted to see, is the GM really going to send someone out there? But
now he's shocked, I tell you.
Right.
Warning.
I mean, maybe not. But
have you read ahead? Do you know this for sure? Are you hedging your bets?
The rest of it doesn't have anything to do with it.
Because I think that there are some people out there that, and I've had them at the cons. I've GM'd them way back in the past. There was a friend of ours who went crazy, and he literally everything that he wouldn't take. He's the kind of guy that would kill the quest giver or wouldn't take the bait and go somewhere else.
Right.
And you're like, so the rest of the party's doing something, and I'm having to jump back and forth just because he wants. He could see the pattern and like, fuck that. I'm going to fuck with you and the rest of the party. And it was just malevolent. It wasn't anything about. Well, I have free will and I'm just playing my character. He was just being a dick.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I think that's a subjective question. So, are there people I wish maybe didn't play?
I'm sitting right here.
Oh, yeah.
Come on.
Oh, my God. It exploded. Sorry, and I know that one.
No, that's it. Yeah, you make, while you're getting that together, I'll cover for you. That you make a very good distinction there, and that is true. There are times, and you don't know. Sometimes you get in a game with people, and then about 5 games in, you're like, this guy's a douchebag, and I don't want to be in this game anymore.
Right.
But now it's too late.
Oh no, for
Is
sure.
it though?
No, yeah.
Yeah, no, technically no. I mean, technically you could just say, hey, sorry.
Oh,
not
having
for
my
me.
kidney removed forever every Sunday for the next 3 weeks. Too bad. That's the end of the game.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah.
I have kidney polyps.
No, there was somebody that constantly showed up for the monthly games when we were doing this monthly Nerd SoCal thing at Game Empire that no one wanted to play with because there were just stuff would happen.
Issues.
Yeah, there were issues at every single table, and people did not have fun. So you wish those people, but you know what? Maybe there's a spot for those folks at a table too.
It's not my table.
In some cases,
exactly. I know.
In some cases, there's a reason certain people play organized play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all they can they've been kicked out of everything else.
Well, that's a generalization, but I can see
No,
what you're
I'm not saying
there's
all
a
of them.
certain
I'm not
structure.
saying all of them. I'm saying, but the people who do get kicked out of every home game they're invited to, eventually are going to find their way to organized play because that's all that's left.
Well, I was trying to dovetail to the fact that there are some people out there that want a more sense of structure. This is what we have to get done in this amount of time, and that's kind of what organized play is. It's like these are the goals you need to accomplish in this time, and it can appeal to a certain amount of people. Like you say, for example, an MMO player, like I've got 3 hours to kill before dinner. I just want to run a couple of quests, get some parts for my sword, and then I'm done.
Right.
And if you can't do that, if you keep getting distracted, you're like, I've got.
Why do you keep talking to my experience points? Right.
Well, and I don't know that everyone who plays organized play isn't in that box, because I knew, once again, a lot of people that would pick it up because they weren't playing a home campaign just because they're grown-ass adults with grown-ass, in real life stuff, whether it was kids, marriage, jobs, whatever. So they couldn't play a regular game, or they didn't know people anymore that played, so they would show up because this was their campaign.
It's methadone.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to deride it too much, but because there are people that, and sometimes that's all they know.
I'm not deriding methadone. Methadone's awesome.
Sorry, Canada.
Sorry, Canada.
Warning, the following story is of a very homebrew game with very trusting players. The devil's douchebag need not overthink here.
All right.
I run a game for 2 of my
That's his nice way of telling us to shut the fuck up and just
Shut
listen.
the fuck up and stop judging me now, assholes. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
I run a game for 2 of my dear
voice,
friends.
too.
The husband and wife are excellent players and very open-minded, and best of all, not assholes. That's in big old caps.
Yeah.
That's not me putting emphasis. Not assholes. In or out of games. They trust me as a DM, just as I trust them as players. This is important because the tale I'm about to weave is not your typical story.
Were they playing naked?
It
sounds like they were playing naked.
They're open-minded, he said. I told the group that I had an idea for a one-shot.
We're overthinking. He told us not to do
Yes.
that.
We were in between games and trying to come up with something
Let's all
else to
take off
do.
our clothes.
And I had...
Sorry, I'm good.
And I had this idea I'd been working on and wanted to workshop with them. This setting is 5th edition. I gave them pre-gen characters, a sorcerer and a barbarian. The 2 woke up in a small town that they had traveled to get away from a big city. The barbarian goes to the bar and orders breakfast, and the 2 find that the food is mediocre. Even when using magic to make it taste better, it's mediocre. This made my players suspicious. The whole point of food in a tavern is that it tastes better than the garbage you end up eating on the road. After the meal, the 2 check out of town. Everyone is just pleasant, always smiling. Suddenly the village is attacked, and the 2 fend off the bandits. The barbarian manages to rip off the bandana covering the face, only to find the being faceless. The moment he looks away to warn the sorcerer, all the bodies have vanished, leaving nice little piles of treasure behind. The 2 characters are then told that the bandit camp is in the mountains nearby, on the other side of the forest. They are given a quest and promised a reward, but rather than deal with that, they want to just leave this creepy town and get out of here before something else bad happens. They try to leave and end up at the forest. Any attempts to leave the forest is met with just ending up at the entrance again.
They're in an MMO.
My players at this point are looking at me with caution. They have played with me for over a year and know that I do not force on rails the narrative. Frustrated, the 2 enter the forest, which is also screwy because when the sorcerer tries to fly up to get rid of you, the trees go on forever, and they seem to never go very far except on the path that is before them. Eventually, they make it through the forest and to the mountain. More fights with faceless, nameless enemies. More perfect little piles of loot. The whole time the players haven't shown much distress at all of this. They know something is wrong, but they keep going.
Does anyone get eaten by a grue?
All throughout the travels, they will get random headaches when they try to think about their past or try to figure out why something is happening. And it's only through failure of the rolls that they begin to see a pattern in all the crazy. Things feeling almost too obvious. Is this a reprint from last week? Does seem familiar.
It feels familiar.
In the mountain, they find the entrance to the crypt.
Is it?
And it was here that they decided to royally screw with whatever had happened to them. There
Not
was a
already
room
another
filled
email.
with coffins and a big locked door on the other side. Rather than enter the room and check the coffins, the sorcerer just cast a fireball and blew everything up.
Yeah, there's things about vampire. No.
Rather than try to open the door, they jammed it shut with spikes. Rather than try to find a secret path, they took a hammer to the wall of the dungeon. The barbarian swung and broke the wall and saw nothing but shining static beyond. The two players grinned at each other.
This has been read
And
before.
dove through the opening as skeletons in the lich were
I
supposed
remember the static.
to fight and try to open the jam door.
Did he send it twice?
Maybe.
I'm pretty good about...
Keep reading because
I'm committed now.
You're committed.
I'm almost done. They found themselves in a void-like place with nothing around them. Suddenly, the barkeep, the blacksmith, the librarian all appeared, all speaking at the same time, saying that they would be fed to their god, the great eater of all. One amazing fight later, the two suddenly lose consciousness, only to wake up being pulled out of the tub of thick liquid. The players are stumped, as I am now asking them questions on character. Do you know who I am? Do you remember me? And then I let the bomb drop. I call the name of one of the older characters from a campaign from months ago.
Yeah, this was written.
The look on their faces when they realized what happened was amazing. They were woken up as their older characters from a previous game. They literally jumped up and down cheering at that moment. I'll never forget. The two once kidnapped characters were helped out of their bonds, NPCs from the previous game helping them to escape the cult they were in, and all ending with the group getting away on a pirate ship. So, what is with this M. Night Shyamalan twist? Months ago, I'd run an experimental game for my friends, and it turned into a much longer story. We all had fun, and we all enjoyed the hijinks involved, but the story had to get cut short to a new player wanting to join, and various other outside reasons. We always look back at those characters fondly. I asked the group if they wanted to pick up the story again, and they enthusiastically agreed.
Yay! That was a great story again.
should I give you guys a new email?
If you want.
Yeah, it's only 809. I'll give you a new.
Okay. That was a good story, though, and I like that's a good example of, like, if you have a really great relationship with your GM, you can have some inconsistencies in the world and know that it's going to go somewhere.
That's a really good example of deja vu.
Deja vu. Well, yeah, except it's not a really good example of deja vu because it fucking happened because you printed the email twice. but I mean, kind of looping back to that first topic, like, there's inconsistencies in the world there, but they knew and had that relationship with the GM, so they were willing to trust and go with it, knowing that, like, it was what you were talking about earlier, where it was like a story hook and part of the plot. But you have to have that trust there, otherwise people just get pissed.
And you earn that as well, and you prove it in your GMing, which is like, at some point, even in the game, you're like, guys, there's a reason. Just trust me. And that's what Stu said early on when he preempted this. Is like, if my NPCs or whatever are acting inconsistent, there's a reason.
Right.
It's for the plot. I'm not just being inconsistent. I haven't lost my mind. There's a reason. And I think that's important for as a player. Because there is this trust issue thing going on. You don't want to end up like this guy in the other email where he doesn't trust the GM.
That's what I was going to say. That's almost like
the polar opposite
points from the other one. But because they had played together and they knew there's something going on.
Yeah.
It's not just dickery.
Yeah.
All right. This is from Jab.
Can we read it?
Jab?
Do you know?
Is it in the... Did you paste it to the thingy?
No. Did you want to read it?
Sure.
Let me copy it real quick.
We can pass the thing on.
Whichever you want to do, because I can read it on my phone otherwise.
I can just Slack it to her real quick.
Oh,
Slack it to me, baby.
Slack it to me. Make sure I get the PS's. Copy. And then I have to find Slack and open it. This is great radio.
Yeah, it is.
It's fantastic.
I do like the idea of the
Slacked.
Yeah. Well, but I also really like the idea of kind of the static, like them going through this transformation and going back into characters they saw before.
That's really cool.
It's kind of Matrix.
We can talk about what we played this week, if you want, while you're doing that.
No, it's done.
Okay.
You got it. You should. It's going to space. Give it a second.
Space! I think I got it from space.
Where's the email?
Where's my stew? There we go. Okay. There it is. Greetings, you designer Louis Vuitton bags with which douches are occasionally associated.
I would love to have a Louis Vuitton bag. I'm just like
terrified.
Like if someone wants to send that, that'll be accepted.
Not a Louis Vuitton, but a Louis.
And not a fake one.
Yeah.
Actually, a good-looking fake one. I'll take that too.
Really?
Okay.
You can really find one downtown.
Oh yeah.
I am
running. Have you ever taken like red nail polish to the bottom of your shoes to make the fake Louis? Okay, never mind.
No, I know you like what we're talking about.
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
not going to. I will neither
You're not going to
confirm nor
confirm,
deny.
Yeah. There's a red electrical tape that looks like that.
Mm-hmm.
I am running into a bit of an issue regarding fear mechanics. For UC, I realize I might not be utilizing them efficiently, i.e. not at all in certain settings. The story. I'm running a post-apocalyptic Savage Worlds mini-campaign. I'm rather proud that I have managed to accurately capture the feel of anxiety and oppressive desolation that makes most apocalyptic settings a wonderful petri dish for exploring the darker side of humanity. And my players seem to be enjoying it as well. However, one of my players took the bravery advantage for their character.
Oh.
This edge grants them a bonus to fear checks due to either sheer courageous mindset or simply being so jaded they are no longer horrified by things.
Stu's got his own sound over here. He's just...
It works well with the character who is a seasoned mercenary of the wasteland and has seen all that mankind has to offer. However, at one point during the last session, he mentioned offhand that since we started the game, we haven't made a single fear check. It wasn't necessarily said in a frustrated or upset way, and he very much seems to be enjoying the game, but it's been nagging at me like a significant other telling you to feed the cats or do the dishes and get off the damn computer and stop playing Warcraft.
Right.
For you,
I don't know what that's like at all.
You don't have a cat.
Exactly.
Your cat would die.
Yeah.
Yes.
I realize I have always associated the fear check mechanic of most RPGs with the supernatural forces.
Sure.
With supernatural forces. A ghost or zombie triggers a fear check because they are alien to our understanding of the mortal cycle, while a demon triggers it due to them being the manifestation of our deepest sins, things that shake or rattle a person to their very core by the nature of their existence.
Cthulhu.
It never occurred to me that, frankly, I am not sure in what situations to call for fear checks when players are in a game that lacks any supernatural elements whatsoever. It begins to dip into what my gut tells me, admittedly without evidence, is stepping on players' toes when you make them take a fear check to not cower in fear from someone who is.
It kind of makes you seem like a little railroady, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, just a guy with a gun and a mean disposition. I figured that I could just use the metric of, well, what might cause us in real life to have a fight or flight reaction? But that doesn't translate well to a ttrpg. These characters are adventurers, and by nature of the fact that they are willing to take on such dangerous careers means their bar for scary is much higher than ours. Even as a Marine, I can tell you I'd think 2 or 3 times about doing what some of the players...
Some of the things
player characters not only do at the drop of a hat, but build entire character concepts around.
Right.
So I ask you, in a setting with 0 supernatural components, where the only possible enemies the players can face are wild animals or human beings, what sort of situations would you call for a fear check? What metric would you use? Or would you just disallow the mechanic altogether to allow for more player freedom? Rock on, you magnificent bastards. Just another us drone.
Oh.
P.S. Tell Tappy to hit me up for some recipes for alcoholic beverages from the Fallout universe, if he wants them for the project he's working on. P.P.S. Drink your presumably non-Fallout related alcohols.
Pruno.
Now.
New cola.
Pruno.
Yeah.
They had to have Pruno there.
New cola.
Every civilization has Pruno.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was going to say, I would just start by asking, maybe you could still do it, but if you were setting up your session 0, that could be one of the questions you would have asked people is what they would find scariest.
Ding, 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 right there. Campaigns are either going to have a fear mechanic that's get used or they're not.
Yeah.
And you need to decide that up front. The guy who made the character with the bravery advantage or edge probably needs to be able to pick something else if you're not going to be using those mechanics, because that's really the only purpose for it. I was in a game where I had this one of the few times I was a player in a campaign. I made a character that had night vision. I could see better at night than in other times. We're in a situation where it's low light and there's a bit of detail I need to be able to pick up. The GM is trying to create a real tense situation and says, you don't have time to look, what are you going to do? And I'm like, right on my character sheet I got this thing, which is exactly the reason why I should be able to see what you're saying I can't see.
Yeah.
A consistent world.
Inconsistent world. And the thing is, when you've spent points on something that has 0 game effect, it's very disheartening.
Yeah.
So this guy, if you're not going to use the fear mechanics, which is fine, you may be running a game where you shouldn't use the fear mechanics, they're not appropriate, go ahead and let him switch out for something else.
I can hear your voice in my head, which is like at the beginning of a session or even maybe halfway through, you're like, I'm going to start using the fear mechanic. All right? So you guys should all be prepared for the fact that we might be making some fear rolls now and again. I'm not going to do it at every turn, but I want to start exploring this whole idea about fear, okay? So all you all know.
In the last L5R game, spoilers, it's not up yet, is it? No, it's not up yet.
So.
I used the fear mechanic for awe.
Yeah.
Because it worked fairly well, and it was crippling, and the party's like,
worked great.
Everyone around the table was like,
It worked great.
My badass is not badass anymore.
we're going to lose this fight.
Yeah. We thought we were totally going to.
And the other part of the question,
Except the dumb archer comes walking in, and he was outside somewhere for a long.
It's a little specific.
Sorry, spoilers.
I would like fighting creatures at night can be terrifying. Because if you're around a campfire or whatever, you can't see very well. And so
you get about 20
orcs,
feet
goblins,
or so.
Even wild
all
dogs.
you see is glowing eyes.
Yeah, terrifying.
And you don't want to go out in there,
No.
because then you're not going to see shit.
And the same thing with that dark cave. You're like, you hear noises and growling, and it smells like, something's
Carrion.
in there, and you're like, everybody make a fear roll.
Or people who are seriously unhinged.
Psychopaths or mass killers or serial
They're
killers
just mad
and stuff.
sorcerers or captain of the guard. I mean,
you could easily have a fear check when you are stumbling around through someone's basement and you find their collection of skins or faces or whatever it is they keep.
All the people they've encountered in, Walking Dead.
Right.
And then you get to Terminus, and it's people eating.
I think
I don't get any of those references.
But again, I think it's important to let your players know that you are going to be using the fear mechanic now and again.
Yeah.
And I think you should use it judicious or not. What's the opposite of judicious? Judiciously. Just be careful. You just got to be careful. You don't want to at every turn hit them with a fear mechanic. It's just going to be. It gets old.
Well,
it needs to be genuine fear, and it needs to be surprise, and you need to save it for special moments because that's when.
I'm working on a fear mechanic for Moment of Truth right now. And I kind of have the basics of what it's going to be down, but what I'm working on now is when it applies, how it applies. Does it, when you see this thing, the first time, obviously there's going to be a big fear check. If you run away and see it later, is the fear check going to be easier?
Yeah.
Or maybe depending on what happened the last time, maybe you saw it do something that was even more horrific, and now you're more scared of it than you were the first time. You know what I mean?
Oftentimes, after fear, it turns to anger. So the next time you see the guy cutting the head off of something, and now you're pissed. You're like, oh, that first time I was scared. Now I'm pissed.
And then anger turns to hate.
And then hate
turns to suffering.
I think it's okay too for. I did get that one. I do think it's all right though sometimes to have the fear mechanics be dependent on the character. For example, like in Gene X right now, like my character has seen some combat stuff, but not like a lot. But there's also like a trained police officer in the group. So it's like if those two characters were to be in a shootout situation, like it makes sense that my character might have to roll for fear,
and the other character going, remain calm. There's nothing to see
like
here.
They've been through training. So if there's a role play reason and like a backstory reason that makes sense, it also makes sense that not everyone would have to roll. At least I'm okay with that. Again, if you're having like that's also a system that doesn't have things like bravery as a mechanic. So you kind of have to like balance it out. Like we're using the Cortex system for that, so there's not like you can't take bravery that will counter out like a fear mechanic, but you can roll, to see if you freak out or whatever. So I think you have to you can balance the mechanics of the system also with the role play and the backstory aspect of things, which I think just having everybody roll every time is sort of lame too.
In that recent game where you substituted awe for fear, that was the first time we'd encountered that mechanic or ever used it, and you could have used it.
It had been used before. It had been used before in the old Inukai game when you guys ran away because you guys were going to fight ogres, I believe. Yeah. And you heard the impact tremors of them walking.
Yeah.
And you couldn't see anything because it was really misty.
We were all injured.
And you were all injured, and so you all decided to run.
Yeah. That was early.
But I don't know if that was a result
There was only, I think it was only the 3. Yeah. Were you in the game yet?
That would have been only the first session of that game then.
Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, if I wasn't there, because I only missed the first session, I think, of that game. Or maybe the second session.
Ooh, I thought we did a few without you.
No, there were a few.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we did. I don't
know
if
that was the result of a roll or if we just decided, because I remember I think I was in a cart wounded, and I think Tyler had, and then I think we decided to run.
I know I got all the fear mechanics out specifically for that, because they're like a Fear 4 monster or something outrageous.
But I think we avoided combat, because I don't remember even seeing them then getting feared. I think we heard the impact tremors were like, fuck this. It's like,
right.
Masashi, you all right? I can't move. And
get in the wagon. Gideon!
Yeah! We ran on our own accord. One of the few times where the heroes have done that, because that doesn't always happen.
And then I showed up, and we never did it again.
And they never ran away again.
Never ran away.
I was Shugenja. I had no... that was totally not that
I don't know if you were there yet.
Because
it was near the swamp where you buried the sword. But it may have been an earlier point when they were at the swamp.
I may have missed that game too.
Yeah.
There were some times
I don't remember.
We ended up playing around missing people.
I want to say that was when you guys buried the sword and then were leaving and then you heard them.
Nobody knew I buried the sword. No, there was like fire.
No, you moved the sword. The party buried the sword and then you went and got the sword and moved it.
Spoilers. No, that's no spoiler.
That's a like 5-year-old game.
6-year-old game. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you.
Good email. Yeah.
Does that work for you there?
Yeah.
Just another...
Drone. It's Drone. He's awesome.
I don't know who Drone is.
Drone's amazing. He's in our Discord all the time.
Okay. All right. Just another drone. Thank you for the email, and I will mark it as read so this doesn't come up again.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
Don't forget the survey.
Yeah.
Yep.
happyjacks.org/2018 survey.
Yeah. All one thing. No spaces.
No spaces.
And it really does affect the show. It really does.
It does.
It's not just words out in the void.
Already has.
It already has. Absolutely.
Cool beans.
You ready to end it?
Sure. You seemed ready.
Oh, it's the wrong song.
Yeah, it is. That's why they're labeled with names.
We're listeners of Happy.
Thank you for joining us for season 22, episode 18 of Happy Jacks RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Kimmy.
My name's Stork.
My name is Jen.
And that's it. We don't have anything more for you. Except next week, we'll be here again at 7 p.m. Pacific time.
Yep.
happyjacks.org/live.
Yep.
We have Bloodblade and Tusk.
Yeah.
On Saturday, we got ShadowCon on Saturday, right? Is it ShadowCon?
Not this
No,
Saturday.
not this.
Yeah.
The next one.
This Saturday is dark.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get in here, and my kids and I are going to have an argument.
Yes.
So you can watch that. I don't know.
Cool.
No. Check out happyjacks.org/schedule, and you'll see all the upcoming stuff.
Or schedule if you're from England. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Focus hilarious.
It's a trigger alert for somebody.
Bang away, Lulu, bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone? Oh, bang stores. But Lulu works in a dockside house with 40 other whores. Well, Lulu had a baby. It was her pride and joy. She would have named it Lulu, but the bastard was a boy. Oh! Bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong.
Stork's hair is great!
What the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone? Oh, bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone?
She took me to the stables and we sat down in the stalls. And every time the horse would neigh, she grabbed me by the balls. She took me to a mountaintop and banged me on a hill. 'Cause every time I said I won't, my echo said I will.
I will. Bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone?
Why problem
bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone?
Our Lulu, she ain't very old. She's only 23. She spent one night with a sailor boy.
Welcome to Costco.
Next morning they both kissed goodbye upon the city docks. Lulu had his money and that sailor had the box.
Oh, bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone? Oh, bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone?
Well, Lulu has another trait that men know very well. When she lies down and spreads her legs, she has that special smell. Well, Lulu's explanation when men turn away in shock, she says, "Don't look at me, good sir, we must be near the dock."
Oh, bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone? Oh, bang away, Lulu.
Go on,
bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone?
I wish I were a bar of soap in me Lulu's tub. For every time she took a bath, her bosom I would rub.
Why
Me
problem
Lulu,
make-
she's a clean one. She always smells real nice. Although she's got the pox and warts, she hasn't any lice.
Oh, bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone? Oh, bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone?
I wish I was a wedding ring upon me Lulu's hand.
Invertebrate!
Every time she scratched her ass, I'd see that promised land. I asked for her to marry me. She said, "You're very nice, but I'll make you a better deal. I'll let you ride half price."
Oh, bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone? Oh, bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone?
I went down to the bakery to get me Lulu's bread. 'Cause in return to say her thanks, she always gives me head. I did return the favor, as is my predilection. But 'cause I'd eaten half the loaf, she got a yeast infection.
Oh, bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone? Oh, bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone? Oh, bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong. What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone? Oh, bang away, Lulu. Bang it good and strong.
Go on.
What in the world will the Navy do when good old Lulu's gone?
The preceding program has been a presentation of the Angry Folk Media Empire.
Why problem make when you no problem have you don't want to make? Go away, Baton. Welcome to Costco. I love you.
You know, that's just like your opinion, man.